morning, everyone. We are doing another episode of the Saturday Artist Live Interview Podcast, episode 13 this time. And today's guest is Kristen Robertson.
So why don't you introduce yourself?
Oh gosh, where do I start? I'm Kristen. I'm from Spokane, Washington, and oh gosh, I have not done this before, so you're gonna have to lead me on what to say.
All right, so describe your art.
Oh, describe it. Oh man. Well, I'm kind of still in the testing. Okay, let me backtrack before I start going into that. I've been doing animals for a while, testing on that, seeing where my skill set is, and I've loved it. But then I've kind of transitioned from animals to landscaping, so it's kind of been a slow process, but I'm still experimenting. So I'm an experimental artist, you can say that. So,
I totally feel that. What mediums do you work in?
What was that?
What mediums do you work in?
Before, when I was doing with my animals, it was oil pastels, which I've been talking to a lot of artists about. And they're like, I can't stand oil pastels because they're so hard to work with. And I'm like, I understand that. I get where you're coming from. But that kind of made me feel a little bit special since I can do something that most artists can't do. So I have like that bragging right, in, if you can say. But then I've been kind of getting like not bored with it, but just more like not bored. That's not the right word. Just been drained of doing the same thing over and over again. So I was deciding, well, to get me back into that, I need to do something different. And so I've been doing acrylics, which I kind of was resisting to use for a while because I wouldn't have that bragging right anymore. But it's like once I got my own space, I was able to move in with my mom. I'm like, get my old room back and turn that into a studio space. So that way I would be able to have some more space to work in instead of using the floor with my acrylic, so which is really a pain in the butt.
Oh,
so
my God,
I've been working on that for a while just to get myself back into the swing of things, and hopefully I'll go back in my animals because I've had people ask me, well, why aren't you, showcasing your animals? I'm just like, because I'm just like tired of it. So yeah, so we'll see. We'll see what happens.
What got you started on art?
Well, I've been in the starting in art. Well, I've been in the fine arts for quite some time. Like I've been into dancing and music and theater and all that fun stuff, pretty much all my life. And I really never took like painting seriously. I would just do it here and there, but not like really invest myself into it. It wasn't until the end of September of 2021 was when things really started rolling with the seriousness of it, because I was invited to be the lead artist of this practice run of this event called the Monroe Street Art Walk. And I don't know how many months they've been doing this, but the first month that they pulled it off, a group of ladies from my church at the time wanted me to be the lead artist because they got themselves involved in this event. So I was like, yeah, sure, but I didn't have like anything updated. It was like I had pieces that I did like years ago, and not up to the skill level that I'm at right now. So I was like, I really don't want to showcase these, but these are the only things I have available. And I said, well, how many pieces do you need? They're like, well, about 9. And I'm like, and it's like the event's in like 2 weeks. So how in the heck am I supposed to like get 9 pieces done in a short amount of time? I was able to pull it off, luckily.
Nice.
I had to show off some of my old work, but it was like my old work, my new work, whatever. It's just to show like my improvement. But the pressure is pretty cool. I like the pressure because it just like makes me actually go in and have something to look forward to. So yeah. But that was
I totally feel that.
And once I started doing that and seeing my art on the wall, other than my own or like in the corner somewhere, I actually got really motivated to really start looking more into taking my art seriously. So that's really where it all started.
So why did you choose oil pastels?
Because I was practicing it several years ago. I had like a packet of oil pastels on hand. I think that somebody gave it to me or something. And, you know, like, I just wanted to play around with them and see. I mean, they weren't the high quality kind. They were just like the cheap kind. But, you know, like, I was just toiling around with them and seeing what I could create. And I got a lot of compliments on what I already did, even though it was like premature. It wasn't like, you know, anything extremely special or whatever, but the compliments helped. So it kind of pushed me into it. And then once I really saw my talent, you know, because I didn't think that I was, you know, all that good. But when I got in, like that year, when I started taking things seriously, I saw my skill level like jump from like amateur to like really good. And I'm like, and you know, people who noticed what the medium was, they were shocked because either they thought that it was what was it, like oil, like color pencil or watercolor was the two mediums everybody guessed that they were, and I would just laugh and say, no, you're not even close. So yeah, but anyway, I just feel like if I can master something that most artists can't figure out, again, it's all part of my bragging rights. So, you know, that's why I use them.
It does make it nice.
Yeah.
No, like because I've never done anything with pastels. Like, I mean, I had them as a kid, but I was never trying to actually like make art. I was like, yeah, I'm a kid. I'm just drawing just because my dad was an artist, so it's art supplies everywhere, and I just take his stuff and just start drawing.
That's pretty much it.
What's something that you would like, tips and tricks that you would say for someone that's wanting to start out with oil pastels?
Oh gosh, you know, a lot of it had to do with a lot of you know, trial and error. Because I mean, like, if you look online, there's not that many tutorials at all with oil pastels. Anything that's actually like above the beginning level that I've noticed. I mean, there's been some where I've hit where they've actually talked about, you know, like a little bit above the beginner phase. But again, I had to figure a lot of it out on my own. And it's just, I mean, how do I explain it? It's going to take some patience. Just know that you can't really blend them. I'm like, if it's not like paints where you can actually, like, if you make a mistake, you can like color over it and fix it. Because for me, my goal is to do one piece and do it right the first time. And it sounds really bad because, like, you know, it's like, because if I make a mistake and I know I'm going to make a mistake, it's either, it has to be a small mistake so I can like use one of those, what was it, X-Acto knives and kind of scrape the coloring off a little bit. But if it's a big mistake, I'm going to have to start all over again. And I really don't want to start all over again because pastels, even if they're like the better quality kind, they're not cheap and they're hard to come by. So I try my best to do it right the first time. So I'm very careful and I don't use that much medium in the beginning because I've found out that a lot of the time newbies like use a lot at once and just like, you know, use a lot of it. Just, I mean, like just the first layer, you know, and that's a problem because it's going to easily smear if you're not careful. So what I've discovered, and it has to be, well, not necessarily because I've been doing it on different types of paper, but if it's the paper that's like easily gripped, it's like that's easier to use because that way you can just use a little bit at a time. And then what I discovered myself personally is that there is, like, I used to use those blending tools, the paper blending tools. What are those called, by the way? Like, I can't remember the name of them.
I have no idea. I have so many of them, just all in my desk. But
the ones with the round tips or the ones that just blend. I can't remember the name of them, but I never liked those because I never could figure out how to sharpen them back because once they blended, like once you dull them out, it's just like, how do you sharpen it to get that point back? So I feel like I'm wasting a lot of money. So I was trying to figure out another way to go about doing it where I didn't have to keep buying more constantly, because that's just a waste of money right there. So I went through to the craft shop, and I discovered, I think it was in the ceramics section, I'm not sure, but there were these like the blender tools that have the what is it called, the rubber tips, like these.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. They last forever, and they're amazing at blending the colors together. So what I wind up doing is just like do a little bit of medium first and just layer it very lightly. Just not just like dig in and make a whole big blotch of color in one spot, but just like do fine details, but just do very light amounts, like very little amounts, and then just layer it if it's not, not sharp enough, or not like the color's not rich enough to your liking. So yeah, but those tools are amazing because they last forever and they do a phenomenal job and they don't wear out. So I mean, I don't know how many months I've had that one, but yeah, it's been going on forever. And then another discovery that I discovered on my own is that for small details, and I know this is another big pain for a lot of people, is that because for my animals, and I use oil pastels for my animals because I just love, for some reason, animals and oil pastels work great for me. But for the eyes or any small details that I use for like black or whatever, because I always start with black in the eyes and the noses and the details around that before I put the color in. I discovered that the best thing to use, for me anyway, is oil-based eyeliner pencils.
Interesting.
Yeah. They have the same exact, not material, but they have the same consistency as the oil pastels do. So they blend the same, they make the right amount of details. You have to continuously sharpen them, of course. But I went to, as I was driving home one day, I was trying to figure out how to go about doing it. And on my way home from work, I decided that I was going to stop at the dollar store and say, there has to be something in the store that will help me out on this. So I was like walking around, and I had another idea in my head at the time, but then I stopped at the makeup section, and that's when I discovered the eyeliner pencils, and I'm just like, maybe this will work. So I took it home, tried it out, and I'm like, this is phenomenal. This is so awesome. So I've been using those for my, my basic, like the eyes and the nose and everything else like that, and then I kind of upgraded that for other small details. If I wanted color besides black, I would go with oil-based pencils. So I've been upgrading on that. So, but yeah, oil pastel-based eyeliner pencils are fantastic.
So when you start a painting with or a picture, what would you call an oil pastel thing? Was it a painting, or is it like?
I don't know. I want to say it's painting, but it's really not painting. So
right.
I haven't figured that out yet. I don't know how to explain it to a person who's not artistically, or who is artistically challenged or whatever. Like, I don't know how to explain my pieces.
So when you're creating one of your images, we'll just say that to make it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Do you do like a light pencil sketch to get everything in proportion, or do you, as you were saying, like just start with black and kind of figure out the proportion as you're going?
I sketch it out first. I just do an outline of the animal before I start putting the colors in. So yeah. So.
And so because I remember you said that you did theater and dance. Has that influenced the way you do your art?
Not really. I mean, they're different outlets, like their own category. But I just think it all blends back into the creative aspect of the art world, if you want to call it that. But I don't think it's influenced me when it comes to the painting aspect. It's just one more creative outlet that I can plug into. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you choose to do your subjects, is there a specific thing that you're looking for in the subject that makes you like, I want to create this? I know you do animals a lot, but is there a specific like shots or angles that you look for when you want to do an animal?
It's the portrait, like the face, because I'm more all about the eyes in the animal. I'm not, because the funny thing about me is I have ADHD, so I'm always focused on the eyes because that's what brings the animal to life, in my opinion. And so
Agreed.
if I get the eyes right and the nose and the mouth right, and that's when I'm like, oh, this is great, this is perfect, I want to move on to the next one. But then I have to remind myself, there's color in this animal, you can't just stop midway. So I just have to put in the color after that and see where it goes from there. But yeah, my focal point is always about the eyes, and if I can get their eyes right, then it's going to be good afterwards. So yeah, but I mean, if it's the frontal, and if it's not in a weird angle, because I don't trace the animal, I just look at what I'm looking, like my reference photo. If I look at the reference photo, I eye it. Like I don't measure, I don't do anything. I just like freestyle it. And if it's in a weird angle, then my perspective, the way I look at the picture and the way I draw it, it can be off. And I know that it's off. And so so I have to do it over and over again and get the sketch right before I put the color in. But it can be very frustrating when I know that the proportionate, angles, the weird angles is just going to throw me off. So it has to be the right, like, side profile, or like they're looking at the side or frontal or whatever. But I make it work.
Do you find that doing art has helped with your ADHD at all?
I don't know. That's a good question. I remember there was a few times back when I was taking art in college, because I was trying to get my degree in photography. Once I found out how expensive that career can go, I decided not to do it. But the art class that I was in, the basic one, I remember there was a project that I did, and at first I was stumped because I didn't know where to go with it. But then once I figured it out, I could go into hyperfocus. But of course, and I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that I didn't have as much life experience as I do now. So the hyperfocus at the time was pretty easy for me to go into, because I was able to do this project within the weekend. And it was a big project too, because I didn't take any breaks. The only breaks that I took was like going to the bathroom and eating, and that was it. And I would stay up till 2:00 in the morning to do this project once I knew what I was doing. And so I always, and with projects now, it's like I can get into it, but I can't tune it. I can't just like go into hyperfocus whenever I want to. So it's like I get into a project and I can stay in the moment for probably about like half an hour, and then I would get distracted, and then I will have a really hard time getting back into it if my heart's not into it. And so like that's what frustrates me, because now I have a lot more life experience, so I think it has affected the way my brain operates now than it did before. So it's been frustrating because I really, really liked how I was able to do in the past, but it is what it is, and I have to go on with it. So I wish that I can get into hyperfocus again and be able to like really get into it, but it's like it really depends on the day. It depends on how I'm feeling. You get that, though.
Yeah.
I'm sure you do.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself either doing kind of an all day or nothing type thing when it comes to art?
Oh yeah. I've had more no days than more more days of me not being in it versus me being in it for some reason or another. Like I've been, you know, and I've been trying to train my brain into believing that don't think, just do it. Don't think too hard on how it's going to turn out. Just shut your brain off and just do it and see what happens. You know, and of course you understand this completely, but I'm just saying that, you know, it's been like the last painting I've done, not my animals, but my landscapes with my acrylics. It's been like over a week and a half since I got back into the painting that I was doing because it was frustrating me because it wasn't coming out the way I wanted it to. So
I feel that, man.
But I spend more time staring at it than I actually paint. And so I feel like I'm wasting precious hours of my time just staring at this thing and trying to figure out what the next step is going to be. And instead of just like plowing through it and say, just see what happens. Like don't procrastinate and think too hard, because you know in the end it never turns out the way you wanted it to anyway.
Yeah,
like
it's always completely different in your head versus what you can get on the canvas.
So it's just really hard to break out of that mindset, so it's like frustrating.
I totally feel that. Like, how much time do you usually put into one of your pieces? Does it vary, or do you kind of have like a medium?
Well, no, there's really not a time limit. For again, when I get into, if my heart's in it, it doesn't take me very long. I mean, my animals take way less time than my acrylic paintings do. Mainly because I know that I only have one chance to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, but if my heart is in it and I'm mentally in it, like it can take me about maybe like the quickest I've ever done was like maybe 2 days. 2 days. If it's a small one, if it's like an 8x10, that goes by pretty fast. So even though I charge more for my oil pastels than I do with my acrylics, but anyway, that's beside the point. Yeah. So I mean, but if it's a more detail-oriented one, it can go a little bit longer than that. It's mostly the sketching that takes forever to do, because I want to make sure the proportions are right and everything. And again, I don't measure anything. You know, I just like look at the picture and then I sketch it out by what I see. So that takes time. But after that, when the color goes in, then it just usually goes from there. Once I get the eyes done, the nose done, you know, it's just like put the rest of the color in and hope it turns out well.
So when you're staring at one of your works that you're trying to figure out what you want to do next, do you visualize it in your mind? Like, how, like I'm going to do this, I'm going to put this there, and then you kind of see like, no, that won't work.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I always visualize it, but then again, I have to tell myself it's not worth that much brain power because it never turns out the way you expect it to. So it's like, don't think too hard. It's just like, let it do its thing, because it always seems to have, you know, I mean, I know, you know, that it's like art, like painting, like every piece seems to have a personality of its own. So it tells you what it wants to do. And so you have to follow through with what it wants you to do, because I mean, it never follows through with what you want, because it always says, no, do this, no, do this, do this. It's like, fine, okay, I'm not going to fight with you anymore. I fight with it, and it says, no, we're not going in that direction. So, yeah, I have to remind myself, don't spend too much time thinking about it. Just let it be and let it do its course, because it's going to turn out the way it wants to. So
I found lots of artists are like that. And if I remember correctly, Michelangelo, when he would chisel stuff out of stone, his whole thing was, I'm not creating anything, I'm freeing it from the stone. So it's about the material and what it wants to bring out rather than your own intention.
Right.
I find this very interesting that I've found that across various artists that I've talked to, that it's more of a process of kind of like a meeting between the medium and the artist. So like the creation that comes out is not just the artist, it's what the artist is working with as well. It has like its own qualities of personality that comes with it.
Exactly, yeah. And that was a hard thing for me to grasp, and it still is a struggle sometimes, because like,
it's a weird concept.
I still want it to turn out this specific way, And and the problem that I've discovered is that with my animals, like I've always wanted them to be like realistic
Mm-hmm.
and as realistic as possible, but they don't want to be realistic looking. Like, I can't describe it, but it's just like they want to not, how do we, interpretation? I don't know what you would
Mm-hmm.
call it, but they don't want to be realism. They want to have their own style and come out their own way. So it's like it's an ongoing fight because I want it to look as pristine and perfect as possible, but they're like, no, we don't want to go that direction. So I mean, like they look realistic, but they don't at the same time. So it's like, yeah, it's an ongoing fight with them, but they always win in the end. So it's like, what's the point? It's like I'm wasting my time trying to fight with them.
I've had that in several paintings. I'm trying to work on a painting of a nebula, and it just came out so different than what I wanted that I'm just like, I have the same problem. It's like it's sitting next to my desk, and I'm just like, not going to touch that right now. But I'm going to figure it out eventually. But so going from oil pastels to acrylic, what was that switch like for you?
It was hard. Because again, it was the pride thing, and I was always telling myself, everybody's doing acrylics, everybody's doing oils, like everybody does watercolor or whatever. Like
I refuse to do oils.
I know. I'm just like, no, I'm good. But like, it was one of those things where I keep seeing my animals, and I love my animals, like what I've already done so far, like I just love them. But at the same time, it's just like, I was drained, and I'm like, okay, well, it's either your pride is going to come out, it's going to keep you from, expanding your creativity to, like just bite the bullet and see what comes out of it, just follow the stream with the salmon going the other direction, And I was just like, okay, well, if this is going to help, I'm going to bite the bullet and see where it goes. Because originally what happened was that, and this is really funny how it all even started, I purchased these small little canvases that I got at the dollar store, and it was for a totally different project, and a long time ago. And so like I had a couple of paintings that I purchased, and again, it was for a totally different project, but I never got to it. And so it was sitting there for a long time, and I was getting so frustrated with myself because I'm like, I don't have the brain capacity to push through another, animal portrait, and commissions were draining me because like my heart wasn't in it. And if my heart's not in it, I don't feel like it's coming out right in my mind, and people are paying for this. So it's like the extra pressure, so I personally don't like commissions because it aims a whole nother dimension of pressure and stress that I don't like. And so anyway, so I was feeling drained about it, and so I was like rummaging through my craft corner, my artist corner, and I saw the little canvases that I purchased and the paints, and I'm like, well, I don't know, there might be something that comes out of this. So I was looking around, and I've been collecting for another project that I haven't even started yet. I should have done it a long time ago, but it's still not even in the works. But I got all these like old different hardware that I got at like what are those stores called? But they have all the different gosh, I can't even remember the names. They have like all the different like cool stuff, like old stuff, and like booths from different artists and crafters. Oh, starts with a B. I can't remember what it is. Anyway, they had a whole big selection of old, like really old hardware, and so I was just like, well, I have like white paint and black paint, and I want to, like, let's see what happens. So without thinking about it, because I said you need to do something where you don't think, you just got to do it, just like get your creative juices flowing again. So I started smothering like the canvases with black paint, And then I poured white paint in, and then I got some of the hardware and I used them as stamps. And no, I backtrack. So noticed, like, it was during the summertime too, and I saw these, like, the weeds growing up, and this is so weird for me to even say this, but my creative juice is, like, kicked in. Like, weeds and stuff growing up, and so I was thinking, like, the grass, like, really tall grass with the little, fluffy tops or whatever. So I'm just like, what would happen if I use these as stamps? So I went over and clipped some of the stamps out, like clipped some of the weeds out, and I brought them in, and I started, again, smothering them back with the black paint, and then I dipped the weeds in with white paint, and I started pushing them down on the canvases, and they came out really cool, and I'm just like, oh, this is going to be awesome. So I started, doing more and more, and then I just said, okay, what else around the house do I have that I can use as stamps? So that's where the hardware came from, and so I'm just like, well, let's see what this looks like. Stamp it on. Oh, that's so cool. And then grab something else and do it again. And so that just got my brain going about the whole acrylic thing. And I said, okay, well, I'm not really happy with the amount of paints that I have. Let's see what I can go out and what other colors I can find. So that's what started the process of me, like, getting into acrylics. And then I had somebody ask me if I could, there was one small piece that I had that somebody really liked on my Facebook, and she's like, can you blow that up into a bigger size? And I said, yeah, sure. So I go out and get these, sorry, it's my cat, went out and got big canvases, and I think it was like the 5-pack or something like that. That was like for $12.
I got one of those today.
Yeah, and then so I grabbed those, and then when she found out how much I was going to charge for it, she's like, that's like, that's a little expensive. Maybe I might want the smaller kind. I'm like, dang it, I was so close. So I had these big, large, like, canvases, like, sitting around, and I'm like, well, now what am I supposed to do with them? And so that's when I had to figure out, okay, so she doesn't want a big size, so I'm going to have to figure out what else to do with them. And then that's when I decide, I'm just going to try this out and see what happens. And so, like, because I didn't have space to paint with, I wound up placing the canvas. I had to put a tarp on the floor and then place the canvas on the floor and start painting. And that's backbreaking, by the way.
Yeah.
But I managed to make it work. And so, yeah, I had a tabletop easel that my aunt gave me a few years ago. And I wound up pulling that out and setting it on the floor and started painting that way on the floor. And I was actually starting to get pretty impressed with myself of how well they were turning out. So I'm like, well, maybe this is my next outlet. So, Josie, stop. So, yeah. So that's how it all started for the acrylics. So, yeah.
So how do you like acrylics versus the oil pastels?
That's hard to say, because I think it frustrates me more. That's kind of weird to say that, because I have more freedom to correct things.
Mm-hmm.
I think my frustration with that is the fact that I do have too much freedom, which means that it will take me, like, 2 times, 3 times longer to get something done versus my animals. Because then I know that I can correct whatever mistake I have, and the more I come back to it, the more mistakes I see. So I have to go back and correct it, and then I see more problems once I correct that, and then it's just like an ongoing snowball effect. And I'm just like, this could take like 2 to 3 weeks for me to finish it, not like 2 to 3 days. So, and then I have all this space to work with, so it's like, it's freeing, but it's frustrating all at the same time. That's pretty much how I feel about it, but it's still kind of impressive of what comes out of it anyway. But yeah, it's pretty cool how it does turn out. Of course, again, it's not realism, but I mean, it's different. It's more messy. It's more, time consuming, but it's still fun and freeing at the same time, if that makes sense.
I I remember recently I was watching this interview with this music producer named Rick Rubin, and he was talking about creativity, and he said having limits makes you more creative because you have only a certain amount of tools you can work with. Do you find that limiting yourself creates more creativity?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And then, of course, again, like the oil pastels are limited because I only have a specific amount of colors to work with, and I can't blend them into a different color. So I have what I have to work with, so I don't have that overwhelming sense of all the possibilities out there, that I could work with. I mean, it's cool and awesome at the same time, but kind of like overwhelming, because then I get to the point where my brain said, well, I got to get this right color, so I had to blend it and take time to figure out what color and the shade. And if it doesn't is the right shade, then I'll get frustrated and I have to go back and then use more paint. And it's just like, and I know how expensive it can potentially be. So I'm trying to be as frugal as possible when it comes to that sort of thing. So I choose not to use like the high-end grade stuff, because that just will blow me out of it, go into debt, and I don't want that, because it takes forever to get the money back for purchases. But anyway, yeah, so I'm trying to be as limited and creatively frugal as I possibly can and with my stuff. So, but yeah, it's freeing but annoying all at the same time. So that's how I feel about it.
What's your favorite part about being an artist?
It brings my true self out, I guess. I mean, again, it's like I don't feel like I have to be put in a bubble. Like my normal jobs, like I don't have that creative outlet. So it's like I feel like I have to think and act and whatever in a specific way that's really not me. So when I, try to get out my creative side, I feel more like myself. And so versus like, yeah, trying to be something else that I'm not. So, I mean, if that answers your question, I don't know if
that does. Because like I have my own theory of kind of like what art is, but in order to kind of get the information for that, I like to ask different artists, like, what is it to you, and what is your favorite part of it? Because I've noticed a lot about art is really about self-expression,
yes,
and communication. Because like I find that lots of artists, they are like you, they have jobs where they can't express themselves as who they truly are.
Yeah.
But then their creativity allows them to create a whole new world where they can just be without any judgment and just relax for once, instead of having to always have a persona of like, hi, welcome to Kmart, or that type of stuff.
Where your heart is not all in it,
Yeah, it's just fake smile all day. Yeah, that's great. I can do that for you.
I've also noticed because of other like national or international Facebook groups I've been in, I've noticed a lot about like beginner artists where even the art that they can't get over just being themselves on what they do, because they think that what they do, everybody's not going to like it, and everybody has that in them, like it's just like, well, is this really considered art? And that's what bothers me, and that was a big problem about when I was in my art classes. And this is the reason why I'm a self-taught artist, because I don't like the concept of having to follow somebody else and then have them, say, well, have you considered this, or have you, why don't you do this, or just follow somebody else's instructions. And it's like I have to follow what they believe is art. And art critics, it's like, what would you consider as art? How is this better than, what do you see in this piece versus, somebody that's never been in art before, but they smother like colors on paper or whatever. Like, a 3-year-old can do this. Why would you consider that like a $5,000 piece of art? And when somebody like you know, that's completely amateur can do the same exact thing. And then what they do is like not worth anything. Like, I just don't understand that. But I mean, so the whole, like, you know, having art be your expression, it's like, I mean, people, I believe that, you know, beginner artists or any artist in general will still think that, well, I don't think that my art's good enough because it's not considered as art. It's like, but what is art? Like,
Yeah.
it's just like an ongoing battle. So, I mean, it's just like there's a lot of I think there's a lot of like not self-awareness, but just like they don't like
self-censoring.
Yeah, being critiqued. It's just like, well, what is it about my piece that you don't like? You know, it's just like, and then you feel like you have to be put in a box because you just want to make sure that everybody loves your artwork, which is not even realistic. But, you know, we still believe that. It's just like, do you like it? What do I have to do to change it? You know, and then you feel that pressure, and then when you try to do that, it doesn't turn out that way at all. So I'm just like, well, if you don't like it, you don't have to buy it. That's just like, I have to get used to that mindset, you know, as difficult as it is.
That's one of my favorite things about being a self-taught artist, is because I've talked to a few people. Some people really liked learning art in college, but then there's others who are like, going to college and learning art was the worst thing for me because I wasn't being taught, you know, how to make art as much as how to make the teacher's specific style of art. And it's like yes, I really love Bob Ross stuff, but if you're just going to be copying that, do something that's what you want to do rather than what the teacher says you need to do it this way. It's like, no, you don't have to.
And like all this stuff, and I'm like, I don't need to know all that. Like, I mean, fortunately for me, I know what looks good and what doesn't look good. I mean, color-wise. And if I'm stuck on something, like, I kind of overthink it because I'm like, oh, you know, like, I don't know much about, like, whatever, the color wheel or, you know, whatever that theory is or whatever. But I'm sometimes hard with myself because I'm just like, oh, does this color go with it? Does this color go with it? And I do too much research, which makes my brain want to explode. And I have to tell myself, like, you know what looks good and what doesn't look good. You know what clashes and what doesn't clash, you know, like, don't be too hard on yourself for this. So yeah, but I mean, that's exactly what you said. Like, that's the reason why I don't take art classes, because it's like, yeah, I can get understanding of theory a little bit more, and I know there may be rules, like hidden rules that you need to learn about, and, you know, like, I don't even know the right term. See, I don't even know terminology for art. You know, I try to make up words that come remotely close, but it's like, you know, I just don't like it. I mean, I just don't feel like I'm free when I'm following somebody else, like you said. So, and then it's another thing where you can brag about that, you know, I'm not, you know, I haven't I've gone to college, but I never, you know, graduated in the fine arts. Because it's just like, you know, it's like, and then another problem is if you're trained in that way of thinking through college and through, you know, all that training, that you're once you set yourself out of it, you can't break that mindset. So it's like you have to do things a specific way, you know, to make your art piece look good. And I'm like, well, where's the freedom in that? Like, I don't understand, but I mean, you do you, you know, and that's another problem. If it's somebody who's been trained that much, and then they look at a person who's been doing it, self-teaching themselves, then they have a problem about critiquing because they see stuff that, you know, the rules that they didn't follow.
It doesn't follow their model.
Well, why does it even matter? Like, you know, like, why are you creating somebody that's trying to just be themselves and just like, you know, I don't understand. Like, it's just a weird world that we tend to get ourselves involved. So,
I think it's valuable to like, if you really want to learn those things, but don't let yourself be limited by them. Experiment beyond what you've been taught. Exactly. It's like, okay, blue and yellow, great complementary colors, like I have it on this one. You know?
Exactly.
But you don't have to let yourself be limited by that. You could try different color combinations, because sometimes dissonance creates a great mood. Like, if
if I remember correctly, Pablo Picasso said you could learn the rules to break them. The whole point is to be self-expressive and to be novel, try something new instead of constantly trying to do the same thing over and over again, because that'll just get you into kind of a creative rut. At least for me.
Yeah, and then another thing that I've noticed again in the art groups is that people tend to and they don't express this, but I have a feeling like they're silently expressing this, that they try to repeat or duplicate a piece that a famous artist does, like not duplicate it, but come awfully close to what that person does. And and they're like all pleased with themselves. That looks so much like the original, and I'm like, why even bother going that route? It's just like you're taking somebody else's, creativity and then taking that and then trying to, I don't know how to even word it, but I'm just saying that I think they just don't have enough, self-confidence in themselves to just go out and do something different with them,
It is hard though, because there's lots of people that will criticize when you try something new, because especially in the art world, everybody has their specific style that they like, or they've been kind of pre-programmed to like, realism is all they want. That's all they like. But realism is just a technique of painting. That's all it really is. It's a technique of art. But then they see something that's abstract and they're like, oh, that's not art. That's horrible. It's like, no, that's a different style. It's a different way of doing it.
So many different
art is so mutable.
Yeah. And I've noticed that, like, from talking to different people, it's just like, why would I want to do something that looks like it just came right out of a photograph? Like, don't get me wrong. I'm amazed by people who have that skill, but I try not to criticize people. I really try not to criticize people, especially in those groups that I'm on. But sometimes I do start questioning, like, it's too realistic. It's just like, is that really a painting that you've done, or did you take a picture from online and tweak it just a little bit to make it look
and put it over a filter?
Yeah.
I've seen lots of those where people just take a picture, put an AI filter over it, and then they're like, look at this piece I just painted. Like, I've used those AI things back in the day when they were first starting. I know the little details. I can tell that you just put this through a filter.
And then like 1,000 people are saying, oh, that's so amazing. And I'm just like, how do I answer this? Like, I don't want to just judge immediately saying that that's not real, but it's just too realistic, in my opinion. And I'm like,
in the age of HD photographs, we don't need hyperrealism anymore. We need novelty, something different than what we already see. Because if I want to see something hyperrealistic, I'll just look with my eyes.
Right, exactly.
Even though I really appreciate hyperrealism, I think it's a great technique, it can also be overdone. Just like anything.
Yeah, that's exactly where I stand too. I'm just like, I don't really, that's impressive, because how many hours have you spent on that piece? Like, if you're extremely, extremely talented and you have that born gift, that's, amazingly good. But I can't, in this world of technology, I personally can't tell, like, say that's amazing and believe it versus like, well, maybe they're actually pulling the wool over everybody's eyes and saying, oh yeah, I did this, but it was actually a photograph to begin with, and they're just making it look like it's a painting. But I don't know. I just never know where to stand on that. But if it's something that actually looks like, realism, but that it's a painting or it is an actual piece, then I'm more impressed by that. Just not over the top.
That's why I love Rembrandt, because his stuff is super realistic looking, but if you look close at it, it's really loose brush strokes, and you can see where like the little hairs and oh my god, you go out and it just blends together and looks awesome.
Impressive.
Yeah, that's the stuff that really impresses me. But
I really would not have the patience to do that. That's why I'm impressed by people who do have the patience to pull that off. But yeah, for me, it's just like, if I can get something done within like 2 weeks, for me, that's like a long time.
It kind of feels like we're like we're in a new time of like kind of like what the Impressionists were in. Like the camera just came out, and then everybody realized we don't need to make realism paintings anymore, because you can just go to a place, get your photo taken, and it's perfect.
Right.
So now we need to like think about it differently. Just try to paint the light, and they were just going for the color rather than trying to make every little detail. It's like you have to just give the impression. And then the expression is going beyond that and being like, no, it's about the emotions of the color. You put the different colors. It doesn't have to be. It can look similar to the image, but the coloring doesn't have to match what you see. It can be an expression of what you feel in the moment. Or what you feel about this scene.
That's a hurdle that I'm facing, you know, like especially with the acrylic aspect of it. It's just like I am always in my brain, in my head. I'm like always trying to go look at my my reference photo, and like try my hardest not to feel like I have to get every single color right, and that's a huge hurdle for me to get past, you know. And it's just like, it's okay. That is not what the photo looks like, because you're not trying to make it look like the photo. You're trying to make it as what you want it to be. So it's an ongoing struggle, and it's just like once I learned that personally, I think I would have a lot more freedom in myself. But until then, it's just gonna be, you know, like, oh, I gotta get this, you know. And I have to stand back and look at it, and I'm just like, that doesn't look right. Like, it's not, you know, the shading isn't right, or, you know, like it's not dark enough, or it's not, you know, gray enough or blue enough or whatever, you know. But I'm just like, well, no, you don't want it to copy this. You want it to be its own, you know. Stop fighting it. So it's just annoying how I can't just like let it go and just let the piece take over. You know, instead of staring at the picture the whole entire time and trying to study it and then duplicate it on the canvas, because we all know that it's not going to turn out that way. So why fight it?
That's why I really appreciate abstract art, especially, because I love when you can look at a piece and you can get the feeling of what it is without looking anything like what it's supposed to be, you know? And it's just fascinating, the combinations of shapes and things that people see in their heads that they'll put down on the canvas from just looking like at an animal or looking at a tree, and it'll be, or even like Picasso's stuff. The wild way he put things together, but you still know it's like, oh, that's a portrait of that person. If you can see the picture of that person, you still get the personality of it. And I think that's the beautiful thing about art.
That's another technique that I would love to learn how to do. And then again, I have to break that realism out of my head, you know, so that way I could just throw color on the canvas and just like, let's see what it turns out, you know, like don't, you know, like it doesn't have to be anything, just throw it on there and see what comes out. Again, it's another one of those things where I have to train myself to, like, that mindset I have to break. It's just like, you know, that way I would have so much more freedom to express myself without having to, like, you know, follow something else. But I'm not quite there yet. And it might
feel like
take a while. But
well, I like what Bob Ross would said, it's talent is a pursued interest. So like the more that you keep on, like, you don't necessarily have to force yourself, but just find things that you love about it and just keep going. Just keep going. Keep going, and it'll come to you. You don't have to beat yourself up so much for like, oh, this didn't work, I'm giving up. It's like, no, just keep going. That was good. Happy little accident. Set it to the side. Do a new one.
And that's the funny thing about me too, is just like I talk to so many people about the fact that they have so many different paintings that are put to the side because they, you know, they run out of juice or they don't know what to do with it next, and they put it to the side and start a new one. I can't do that. Like I have the inability right now to be able to put it to the side and start something new. Like in my mind, I have to finish. I guess it's because of the whole oil pastel thing. Like I always do one piece at a time. I can't just put it down and start up a new one. I have to keep on going with that one piece until it's finished, or I know it's finished. You know,
exactly.
So like,
there's always the ugly stage of art.
What was that?
There's always the ugly stage when you look at it and you're like, that's horrible, and you just want to give up. It's like, no, keep going, keep going, keep going.
Yeah, but the first layer is just always the worst, and it's just like, no, it's gonna get better. Look at the other ones that you've done. Oh yeah, that's right. Just just plug it away. Just keep plugging it away. It'll tell you when to stop. But yeah, I just can't put it to the side. Like, I don't have a piece where I feel like I can just put it to the side and start something new. Like, I have to finish that one that I'm doing, move it, and like once it's done, I put it to where all of my other stuff, all my finished stuff is, and then start the new one. Or there are times where I have put it to the side where, you know, I'm very close on finishing it, but I'm not sure that it's done yet. But usually what happens is that I do put it to the side when there's like smaller details I might put in, but I haven't decided yet. And then in the end, I look at it and I'm like, no, it's done. You know, like, there's nothing else to put into it. So all I have to do is just sign them. And there are some paintings that I've had on display that aren't even signed yet because, like, I thought they weren't done, and they wind up being done, in my opinion. I just haven't signed them. So, yeah, but that's just how I roll. I just can't put it to the side. I have to finish it before I can start something else. So when I hear people say,
that's a good structure.
10, 15, 20 pieces I haven't finished yet, I'm just like, I wish I was you. It's like, I so wish I could be like you, where I could just put it to the side and start something new and, you know, like, have all these different projects to, you know, work on.
But then you end up like me with like 5 or 6 paintings that are just sitting there half finished.
Yeah, I can't do that. I would be willing to waste like a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks on not even staring at it or not even looking at it. Just walk away from it for like 2 weeks and then come back to it and then keep on working on it. There's no other projects to start and like to work on. It's just, I need to have one project at a time. That's how I roll. So it's like, that's why I can't cough paintings out, because I don't have, 5 or 6 projects going at the same time. Like, my brain does not work like that. So
have you ever found that like pictures that you created that you didn't necessarily, you're kind of, I don't really like this one, and then everybody else is like, oh my god, this one's awesome.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There have been that. And so that's, of course, that's every artist said. What do you see in this that looks, looks that good, like, and then, like, what was it when I last month, because I had my acrylics put up for the very first time on display, which was really cool, because I've never seen my acrylics put up on the wall before, the first time. And so, like, at the library next door, and so they were, I was putting them up, and the first one was the very first big acrylic painting I've done, and like, I was just like, nah, but it was so much fun to talk to people about, like, how it started and, like, how it progressed. Like, I say, oh yeah, this one, and this one, and this one I did sitting on my floor at home because I didn't have my own space to paint. And they were actually kind of blown away by that. And I said, yeah, I did this all on the floor, because, like, it's backbreaking, it hurt, but I still pushed through it. And but you could see the difference between what I did me personally, I know that a lot of people didn't see it, but me personally, I could tell that there was a difference between what I did on the floor and what I did at my new space. I don't say new space because it was my old bedroom, but yeah, so it was just like the difference, but it was kind of fun to tell people about it. But there are some of them that, I'm just saying, well, it doesn't look, the proportion to me isn't right, like, because I'm looking at the proportion part of it. And I said, that's just, like, off. It doesn't look right. It's too low. It's too high. Like, it's too wide or whatever. And everybody's like, that is so amazing. And the one comment that kept coming up was the fact that they were blown away by the coloring. The colors that I chose. It had nothing to do with the landscape. Well, it had a lot to do with the landscapes, but it was all about the colors that I chose and how it popped out. And when I set up, it was, like, rainy outside. Like, like gray out, rainy, and gloomy out, and then here my paintings come in, and they just pop. So they're like, this is amazing. And I'm just like, well, thank you, I guess. Like, I'm still an amateur at this, but thank you. So yeah, but yeah, there's been a lot of of paintings that I hesitate on even putting up on the wall, but I tell myself, like, no, you need to still do this. I mean, they need to have their attention. You can't just put them to the side and say, oh, this isn't good enough to show off, because it's still what you've done, and what you think is awful, somebody else is going to fall in love with it. So why not? So
Exactly.
That's what I do. I don't like to leave any of my paintings behind, no matter how crappy I think they look.
I feel that.
Yeah.
And before we wrap everything up, where can people find your art and purchase it?
Well, I'm still in the process of finding places to put my art up. I'm still an amateur at that, so it's a slow process. I think the best way to get or see my artwork and potentially buy prints, because I know that people's accounts are like really tight, and I don't want to like throw it at them saying, oh, buy my original artwork. If people want to buy my originals, great. If not, whatever. But I would say probably on Facebook or my Instagram or my website.
And what's the name for your Instagram and for your website?
Should I post it, or like how would that work so people can actually write it down? Like, should I just?
You can just say it, and then I'm going to be putting this on YouTube, so I'll have like the links and everything below. But also just for Instagram, because it won't allow us to kind of like link out of Instagram. Just let people know what the website is.
Okay, so the website is www.rusticwavestudio.com, and it's all one word.
Okay.
And then, yeah, my and right now it's not exactly like up to par. I've been procrastinating on getting it updated.
I feel that.
The galleries are updated. It's just the prints that are available are not updated yet. Then Instagram is Rustic Wave. What's the line called? Like the underline? Underscore, thank you. Underscore 2020. And then Facebook, well, I don't have a business on Facebook because it's too expensive. The website itself is too expensive, or like it's expensive enough. So like just look me up, Kristen Robertson, and it has a picture of me and my daughter. So, I mean, that's the best you can do, and then message me if need be. So, and then we can talk about pricing and what you like and what, because sometimes my acrylics aren't posted yet for prints, but they will be soon. So if there's something that you like in my gallery and that's not posted in my shop, just let me know and we can talk more in details.
Awesome. Thank you, Kristen, for coming on.
Thank you. And I'm glad that you invited, or you were accepting my interest in this, because it was awfully fun and more what's the word? More experience is the right word I'm thinking it is. So yeah.
Well, thank you. We'll have to have you on at some point soon.
I so hope so, because it was really fun.
Well, I'll see you later. Have a great day.
Good.